All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Shutesbury School Committee to order, 7:03. At this moment, it doesn't look like we have any public comment, any public people here to comment. So not seeing any of that. I'd like to move on to our review of the agenda, the perpetual calendar. I trust we've all kind of seen the agenda. As far as the perpetual calendar, I just want to apologize. I had the deadline wrong for the Our Town. It was a little bit of a short deadline this time around, and I put it in my calendar wrong. And so when I went to write it, I was already too late. And I think that from talking to, I don't know if it's Joan or Joyce, I'm going to get the name wrong now, but in talking to her, the school also did not submit anything, but she was able to put some stuff in on the school's behalf from like what we already kind of had in there, she said. So hopefully, she said they'll let us know with more advance notice for the next edition prior to town meeting, the next edition of Our Town, and I'll make sure that I write something up for that. And I'm sorry that I missed that deadline. The other stuff that's on the perpetual calendar that as I go about trying to revise it, we're still info gathering, goal setting on the budget, but Caitlin's got that well under hand. School council is in here as in October for her first meeting. I don't know where that stands. And yeah, basically most of the stuff that we have going on in the next few months has to do with budget in all areas, both Union 28, Amherst Regional, and here in our local committee. As far as today's agenda, two things that I know are not necessarily on the agenda, but I think should be in under either new business or in the reports would be, we did have Amherst had a preliminary four-town meeting after our last meeting on September 29th. So I'd like to report out on that at some point. And then also Jen had brought up at the last meeting two ideas really. The idea of sort of, or maybe it was Anna, a PTO school committee sort of get together, meet and greet, and also about reviewing the homeschool policy. And so those things we might want to discuss at some point as we move through today's agenda as well. Does anybody have anything else to add or anything else to discuss along the lines of the calendar, the agenda? And I'm sorry, I'm getting over a cold, so if I sound sniffly and coffee, that's where I'm at. I'll try to silence myself as much as possible. All right. So let's move on to warrants.
All right, I have two accounts payable warrants, 3007 from October 1st for $50,050.31, and 3008 from October 15th for $37,947.34. I had three payroll warrants, 307 from September 30th for $90,112.73. 308 from October 15th for $109,792.07, and 308.1, this was an additional one, also for October 15th for $1,568.78. There are no gifts or grants.
Okay. Moving on, the approval of the minutes for September 19th, 2024. I know, Leah, you had something that you wanted to correct or add to this, I believe.
Yeah, do I have to? So there's a motion to open discussion on it as well as a motion to then vote on it. Is that how it works?
Okay. Well,
so I can make the motion if you want. Do you want?
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. I motion that we discuss the minutes, or I motion to vote on the minutes for September 19th?
19th.
Yep.
2024.
Do I have a second?
I second that.
All right, Nate seconds. All in favor, please say aye. Mayu, aye.
Taylor, aye.
Lonko, bye.
Leah,
Sorry, Leah.
sorry. Leah, Jack, I know there's like an order
I
that
think
we
you,
tend to
I
do.
mean, Jeremy, I think you have to, before the vote, ask if there's
Oh.
any discussion.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you very much, Shannon.
Yeah,
Well,
so there's,
Before we
so
vote,
there, a motion gets put on the floor by somebody moving and seconding, then it's on the floor, then you have discussion, and then at some point the chair is going to call a vote on it.
okay, so I don't need to call a
This
vote.
is, this is where
This is
you would
discussion.
amend, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you
it's
very
on the
much.
floor
Trevor.
now, and now you can offer amendments.
Okay.
sounds good. Thank you. All right, so on page 2, I wanted to recommend clarifying the language around the conversation on the vacation. So instead of where it says that we have out vacation if they leave their position, I'd like to recommend that we update that with, it seems as if we could pay out a lot of vacation if the person were to leave their position. So that's the first recommendation. And then the second one would be on page 5 to replace EIP with IEP.
Okay, so it seems like we could pay out a lot of vacation if a person were to leave their position. And then the other was on page 5, changing EIP to IEP. Okay. So as a point of clarification, Trevor, do we need to vote on those amendments before we vote to vote to approve the minutes, or can we do the whole thing at once?
Yeah, so what's happening is Leah offered these 2 amendments. I've got them. I took those down. And then the vote is going to read that you're voting to approve the minutes as amended.
All
So you
right,
just take
perfect.
one vote.
Great, thank you. So can somebody move to, unless there's other, is there any other discussion?
The motion's already on the table.
All right,
so you
perfect.
just
All right,
need to-
so
yeah.
all in favor of accepting these minutes as amended, please raise your hand and say your name.
Taylor, aye.
Aye, Mayu. Any was there any abstains or any against? No. Okay.
Not an abstention, but Jack, I in favor.
Thank you. Thank you,
Longco
Leah.
by as well.
Okay. I thought we kind of talked over some people, so I was just trying to make sure. Thank you. All right, so the minutes are approved as amended. Unfinished business updates. We've got capital projects in the building process discussion. There was some discussion last week about Nate and Caitlin and maybe even Ann checking in on the status of some of these things that we weren't sure of. So the floor is open if anyone has things to discuss.
Don't. I appreciate you sending me that info though, Jeremy. That was helpful.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I just sent-
anytime you want to meet and go over anything, I'm open, and you can email me and we can set up a time.
That sounds great. That'd be great.
So,
Yeah, I think
oh, go ahead, sorry.
go ahead, Jenna. I was gonna say, I think I emailed Ann as well. It was just it was Jackie's previous list of the capital projects and where they stood. And I think I just sent that out.
Yes, thank you so much.
So at our last meeting, we had talked about looking into possible MSBA, what could be eligible projects. Within the union, there are some other big capital projects that are coming up also at other schools. So I just today actually signed up for the update. There's going to be an update with MSBA about new projects funding they have coming out. And that is November 1st. And it's going to have a live, it's going to be a webinar, but then a live chat so you can get further information. So I did sign up for that because I think it'll be useful for Shutesbury, but also some of the other schools. So I will report out on that at the November meeting.
Okay, thank you very much, Shannon. Anything else around capital projects and building process? Okay, so moving on to new business and discussion, we have to discuss today our MCAS and accountability presentation. Who's in charge of that one?
Anne is going to present.
I've got you. I've got you.
Okay, thank
This
you.
is such good
Yeah.
stuff that like really we could have flipped a coin over. I want to present, you present.
Yes.
No, it's
Seriously.
really good stuff.
It really is absolutely amazing. You should be so proud of your school, and the work that you're doing to support the Shutesbury Elementary School is really, it's definitely paid off. So let me see about sharing my screen. So then, let's see. All right. Do I need special permission to share it, or are we good to go? Let's see.
And there's a green button at the bottom. I think you can share.
Yes. And for some reason, it is not allowing me to. You know what, Shannon, if I share this to you, will you be able to just
Well,
share it from?
listen, I have a green button. I might not be able to share either.
All right,
Oh.
let me,
It looks like I might be able to. So if you send me
I love
some-
it. It's on your way. It's on its way.
All right.
Yep. Thank you so much. Sorry about that. I was more worried about my soft focus filter for tonight, so.
On
No,
my
I'm just-
screen, it shows that anybody can share, so I don't know why.
Perfect. First, I'll definitely figure that out for the next time, but, you're all set? Okay, Shannon's in the document.
I'm just getting it and I'm going to share it out.
Okay, so just to piggyback what Shannon was saying, it's absolutely incredibly amazing news. I mean, your school has done such an incredible job, and it was tricky because as I was preparing to speak on this, I really wanted to speak to you about why Shutesbury Elementary School is just such an incredible place. I know I've been here for a short amount of time. I accept no responsibility or like no accountability myself on getting you here at all. I know that Jackie did a lot of work and your staff really did an incredible job. So it's really the people. It's really the people and their attention to detail and the interventions that are provided on the daily basis. And there's always multiple opportunities for students to learn and to have gaps filled in, and for small group opportunities that really has sung the story here. Okay, good. So we are. Yes.
Okay.
So the first thing that I have is the overall classification for accountability. So every year, Massachusetts looks at schools that have enough data to talk about sort of where they are. It's kind of like a ranking system. So for the most important thing is to note is that the the state of Massachusetts determines sort of what your targets should be. So that being said, the targets that were set for Shutesbury Elementary School, the school has completely done better than what the state thought that they should do. So that means we had sent a letter about it at the beginning when we first received our scores, was that because of the multiple years that they have had in achievement growth and their progress with their students and work completion and the work that they did with reducing chronic absenteeism, the school was able to get a percentage rate that put them into a very distinguished category that is that plays into their accountability percentile. So in speaking to that, their school percentiles take all of that sort of information and pull it into a number. And our overall classification is a school of recognition, which means that it's a small amount of schools that are commended on their academic excellence and their high growth and also exceeding the growth targets that the state put forward for them. So the school accountability rate is 85%. So that means that the school does not require any intervention from the state, and everything that the teachers and students are doing is working. So, and teachers, when I say teachers, I mean educators, staff, all of the people that go into the work. So embedded in that is a lot of direct instruction in literacy and numeracy, and a lot of people making sure that students have filled in the gaps of the different standards that they're required to know by the end of the year. If anybody wants to meet with me to talk more about that part of it, I would be happy to. So I don't want people to fall asleep, so I'll keep moving on. We've also, it should be noted that we just received this information. So staff has had some input, but we haven't done a total deep dive yet into what the scores mean. So there'll be, we'll have more information about that as we look more specifically at it. But if you look at the first two charts, this is a comparison of our ELA scores in we're comparing the same students to each other. So a lot of times when you go onto the Massachusetts accountability scores, you'll see them comparing fifth grades over several years, but this is actually just looking at the class of, if you can believe it, 2031, our current sixth grade students. And I just put the prior year, the 2023, when there was 15 of them, there still is 15. The 2023 data and comparing it to the 2024 data, which is right above it. So in Massachusetts, in their accountability scores, you'll see that the blue, that means that the student has advanced and they've exceeded, they've demonstrated a comprehensive and in-depth understanding of the standards, and they're able to provide sophisticated solutions to complex problems. In the green, that's proficient. So that means students have a solid understanding of the challenging subject matter, and they're able to solve a wide variety of problems. The orange, it means it needs improvement. It's a partial understanding, and they're able to solve simple problems. And the warning is red, the red category, and students are demonstrating a minimal understanding of the subject matter. So it's important to note too that we know that the MCAS is one data point, and we do a lot more with assessment than just relying on the data that we're getting here. So there's social emotional data, there's obviously entrance and exit tickets that we're looking at to really help us determine what students need. So we recognize that. So if as you notice, and I'm not sure if you're aware, but the school has also adopted two different major curriculums. It's the math curriculum and the ELA curriculum. So they're also in the beginning stages. Some of the classrooms are 2 years in and some are 3. And typically when you're doing an adoption of programs like that, you don't really see too much growth until year 3. So for the students to be in such an early part of an adoption and to have these kinds of scores it's really amazing. So you'll notice that we were able to have our students that were in the warning category completely move out of the warning category. And then we had more students that were able to hit the advanced. So it's a really rigorous ELA program, and that's really sort of speaking to that. If we scroll down, am I going too fast, or is this kind of accurate about what people want to learn about, or too slowly? If you let me know.
No,
I think it's great.
Okay. All right. It's so magical. And like Shannon said, we were going to arm wrestle about who got to tell you all this stuff because it's so incredible. Okay. This data also tells us that we're at an exciting planning place where we're going to be able to do more sort of outreach type of programs and accelerated ideas and things to help keep our students that are at the advanced, have them keep advancing. So then if you look down, math has a similar story. We went down a student, which it can be tough with the smaller numbers. We're not exactly sure how that all works out, but they've been able to move out, again, this series of numbers, the math that you're seeing, the 2024 and 2023 and 2022, that's looking at 3 years worth of math. You'll see that the bottom chart is at the, I think, I'm sorry, my screen looks a little different. Yep, there you go. So the bottom has more students that were in the warning. And then if you scroll up just a little bit, Shannon, they can see the recent ones. Sorry, there you go. Perfect. So then you'll see that it's been reducing in the red category for those students for the math.
And can I ask a quick, the little numbers, I assume that's the percentages.
Oh, absolutely. Great question. That's why I added the number of student enrollment for that year, so that helps people to see that better. Yes, thank you. So again, same thing, early adopting with bridges and math. Again, we tend to notice that students we don't see that kind of growth this quickly, but it's really commendable. It doesn't mean we want the students to start to forget their math facts, because that's still important. So it's something that's really commendable about this is, I think, the intervention blocks that students are getting in addition to tier 1 instruction, that's really helping move our students along. So students don't necessarily have to be in a small group for the entire year, but they can get extra support in standards that they might be missing. If you go up just a little bit to the class of 2032, our current grade 5 students, that's showing the growth that again that we're seeing in comparison from 2023 to 2024. It's
Am I going the right? Am I going in the right direction, Ann?
I think so. What page are
Okay,
you on?
this says current grade 5 right here.
There we go.
Okay.
Yes, perfect. And you're in ELA and I'm in ELA, so that's perfect.
Perfect.
Good work. So again, that's incredible to get all of the students if like to maintain the proficiencies levels at these stages in early adoption of a program is really, it's really incredible. If we scroll down to the math grade 4, are we in the same spot? Yep, and then we'll go to grade 3. Perfect. Good. A similar story. We've got a lot more students that were able to go. We actually had some students that went right from needing improvement into the advanced category. So in thinking about that, I would think the rigor of the math program is really working. It's really helping to push kids' thinking, and they have multiple ways to solve problems, and students are able to show that. So now if we go down, we have a grade 3. So grade 3 is the least amount of data that we have, but it's telling us an important story. So if you look at the bottom line, what that is indicating is an item analysis. So we can actually see exactly what the question was that students were working on. We can actually get copies of their writing when they do the ELA. We're actually can figure out exactly where the students globally did really well in some areas and also needed improvement in other areas. So that can tell us whether or not we're on the right track. So if we scroll down a little bit more, I don't want people to think that we're using this to teach to we're using this to teach to a test, because what that test is representing is the standards, the Massachusetts state standards, which is exactly what we need to be doing. And if you scroll down a little bit more, as we're looking at item analysis and we're really kind of going through more about where our
the right spot, Ann?
Yeah, you're totally perfect.
Okay.
I just wanted to show you what a state standard looked like. So if you look at the example, that's question 19 and how students responded. And then it further drills down. If you scroll down a little bit more, it'll tell you exactly what the question was. And then we can have the conversation about, are students just not understanding the question? Are they fully reading it? Are they able to identify the fraction, whatever the question is, so we can really help them move on. So that concludes what I was going to share tonight about the MCAS. Yeah, that is just a little sample of what the actual standard is, so people can get an understanding of how we use that data to help support what students are learning. I think it's important to note that the school is always working extremely hard to make sure our students are getting what they need, whether that's like a supportive conversation, if they need some cheerleading, if they need to have more time to solve problems, whatever that looks like. The staff is so incredibly caring and intelligent. Like, they are just really able to provide students with what they need. So it's a pleasure, I'll tell you. So again, if anybody has any further questions or wants more clarification or more understanding, I'd be happy to meet with you and show you what they're doing.
Ann, can you share that document with the school?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Are all your emails they're all on the shared email, right? Obviously, I just answered my own question. Okay,
Yep.
yes, we'll do that, Shannon.
One thing I do want to point out about the School of Distinction, is it recognition or distinction? I can't remember which, but there were only, in the whole Commonwealth, they only chose 20 schools. And those 20 schools showed growth, not just their overall score, but that sometimes it's really hard for high performing schools to maintain a high accountability rating, because 40% of your score is growth. Well, if your students are performing at a high level, they're a little bit disadvantaged in how much can they show on that 40%. And this year, most schools took a dip in their accountability rating because they tried to adjust to keep all schools vested. They tried to adjust the formula. So what happened is schools who may have performed the same or even performed higher numerically may have had a little bit of a dip in their accountability rating because of the new breakdown and how it's calculated. And Shutesbury is in a good position that they met all their targets. They exceeded all their targets. As someone who came from turnaround schools, I wasn't even sure what to do with this data. When I looked at it, I'm like, oh, so this is what it looks like, you know.
Same.
But in
Yeah.
all honesty, when I go into the classrooms and I've walked around there, the staff, and it's, you know, kudos to the environment that's created there. They are not saying, oh, you know, look at us, we're good, we don't have room to grow. We had PD this week. They're actively engaged. They're, you know, really still looking to enhance their school set. So this is a big deal.
Yes.
They should be very proud. And Anne's like, where do we go from here? And so I'm going to share with them what I told you was your challenge. I said, well, then I guess now you have to try to become a national blue ribbon school because that's the only next thing. And so she's like, oh God.
Right? No pressure. I mean, it's
No,
and school
listen, and I
recognition.
say that in jest, but it really is exciting. And you know, good things are happening there.
It is. It really is. And as
And
I was
kudos to Jackie. When we found out, I just want you to know,
Yes.
I called Jackie when we found out that the school was a school of distinction and with Anne's blessed, like,
Oh, yeah.
because she helped create that climate, right? And so
Right.
Anne and I are coming in and we're just going to try to keep the ball moving, right? But she was very glad because she's in a school that has a very different picture.
Mhm.
And she said, and I did ask if I could share this. She said, this came at the perfect time because I was really doubting my own ability to move schools because the school's in just such a different place. And as someone, and Anne knows, who's done that work, you can do so much, and movement comes in small steps. And so this was really affirming to her to see that. And she said it invigorated her to serve students in another part of the state. So kudos to her. And I want her to get the credit that she deserves, and the staff.
Definitely. The PTO sent flowers too. So they're very, very excited about the news for sure. But like you said, to be a school of distinction is just, it's actually termed school of recognition. It's incredible. Like, you need wins in all those categories, and I believe they're just going to keep doing it. So,
And there were only 2 in all of Western Mass.
2.
Wow.
That's right.
That is amazing. And can I, not that it really matters, but is like the schools of recognition, that's just like individual schools, high school, middle school, elementary school, all
Yep.
of them?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
So yeah,
Right.
that's amazing.
And they kind of do a roughly a 50-50 split, like half of them are secondary and half of them are elementary. And sometimes the accountability overall rating doesn't always, it's certainly a factor, but you know, you could have an underperforming school that, you know, made a 25% gain. So I mean, it's a school that assessments demonstrated some sort of remarkableness about it. And so kudos to this school.
Yeah, and I appreciate too hearing from you guys, like, because you're new and you come in and you look and you see the same things that I think, you know, got many of us involved in the school committee or in this, you know, this school community. We obviously all have vested interests in this school, and so yeah, it's really great to know. It's great to have what you already feel be proven in the data as well. Like that, it's not just like, yeah, we feel like we have this great thing going on, but like actually, you know, it's there's some data and some rigor behind it to prove it. So thank you. Anybody else on the committee have questions or comments about the MCAS and accountability? All right. So moving on to the superintendent's report.
All right, I did email a copy, but I will give you the highlights here. So tomorrow we have Shutesbury will take part in a professional development day that is known as Curriculum Day. This year's will be hosted at Swift River School. All of the union schools will be coming together to learn together. We will have a keynote speaker, Dr. Stuart Abalon. He is a leading expert in trauma-informed practices and what that looks like in a school setting. He's going to be providing the keynote, but then he's also going to be leading some small group work with educators. So we're very excited about that. Lindsay Rodriguez, our curriculum director, has done a tremendous amount of work around securing grants to bring him in and to have this learning opportunity for all of our educators. So we're pretty excited about that. We have completed with all the schools our first round of instructional walkthroughs, and we are starting our second round next week. I talked last time a little bit about what that format looked like. I know at our last meeting, someone had asked about, gee, could school committee come and be part of that protocol and see what that looks like? And so I am going to work with Anne and with Lindsay to coordinate a walkthrough that if people are available, certainly no pressure, but that you could come and just see what that process looks like. But I am going to let Lindsay get through tomorrow before I even tackled her with that. So there's more info about that to come. Union 28 applied and received a 3-year waiver for our Special Education Parent Advisory Council, which is known as CPAC. The state mandates that each district in the Commonwealth have a CPAC to advise and collaborate on issues regarding special education. It's really challenging because all of our schools are their own little district. And so we've applied for the waiver so that we can have one joint advisory. Amy Langdon, our Director of Student Services, has been really working hard to try to build a working group that can serve as a cohort and support for each other and to provide guidance to the school. She's been at all of the open houses. She's been posting on community pages and the school pages. She has right now about 10 families throughout the union who have expressed interest in taking part. And so they're just working on coordinating best days and times and will it be remote or not and all of those details. The leadership team, including Anne, met with the Franklin County Sheriff's Department to schedule our school safety drills. We will have 3 safety drills throughout the school year. The first drill will be in November, and that will be an announced drill. And then the format will change from that point on. I know you folks have settled your contract, but the other 3 schools in the union will be going into contract negotiations all in the same year. And Caitlin brought to the leadership team a program called Lytics. I'm not sure if I pronounced it correctly. Caitlin can correct me. But we bought a 3-year package, so you will be able to benefit from it in your next round of negotiations. But it allows us a data bank of over 2/3 of the Commonwealth's contracts. Their language, you can pull it right up. You create a dashboard where you can compare your compensation packages and benefits and all that with area schools, and it's a live time. And one of the things that Caitlin, when she was talking about this, stated that it really takes the feedback from the business managers was it takes some of that personal angst that can come when the school committee is bringing an offer, and sometimes it can get contentious, and this is just a program everyone can see, they can share it, and it really takes some of the emotions out of it. So we have purchased it. We did split it between the schools for $3,500 for 3 years. Today, I attended the Franklin County Regional Office for Governments, I think is what they call it. It's a cohort of all the local municipalities, and they offer a lot of different trainings. And today I went for the cybersecurity training that was specifically for small municipalities and K-12 schools. I brought Debbie Lee from Shutesbury went with me because my tech skills are pretty limited. And she accompanied me, and so did the tech person from Irving Elementary. It was mind-boggling. I was a little anxious about technology, and now I'm even more anxious. And they really just, it was a tabletop drill, and they really talked to us about how quickly information can be compromised and what is our legal responsibility. And I've signed up for the next 2 trainings because I'll be frank, and it's something that's going to come up in my presentation to the joint committee. It's something we probably have to look at because it is so prevalent. It was mind-boggling when they were sharing the information, and because our schools are linked to our municipalities, if we have some sort of compromise, it can be really far-reaching really quickly. And the state police have a lot of resources, so it was beneficial, but I'm sure to be reporting out on that going forward. Some upcoming events for me as the superintendent for the rest of the month. I have the Franklin County Superintendent's Roundtable. I have a webinar coming up with the Massachusetts DESE Commissioner, talking about updated things coming down the pike, whether it's licensure for teachers, different funding opportunities. And I know school committees were invited, but next Thursday, Mahar Regional is hosting a Chapter 70 funding symposium. And they have extended that invitation. I think Robin shared it out, but I will be attending that. I believe Caitlin is also attending that. And then I have another school safety, different, not cybersecurity, sponsored by DESE for all superintendents, which will complement our lockdown drills and that sort of information. So that's what I have. Any questions? I will mute and listen.
Thank you very much, Shannon. Any questions for Shannon? Okay. I guess I am a little curious about the LIDEX program and how, I mean, so I guess language and compensation, like I'm kind of curious how, like in real time, having just gone through the negotiation process, like Caitlin, I'm kind of curious, and you can talk about it if you want when you get into your own piece, but just how it's going to make things easier. It's just a pure curiosity.
I think, and Caitlin can speak to, I think it's also going to be more timely, that you don't have to go, sometimes they say, well, in Frontier, they're getting this, and in Amherst, they're getting this, and
Right.
what is the impact?
There's a lot of that back and forth. There was a lot of that back and forth this year.
So it saves a lot of time, and
right
Caitlin can certainly, she brought it to the table, so I'll let her speak to it, but I was pretty excited when she was giving me the quick tutorial. Caitlin?
Yes, so I heard about it from the Franklin County business managers meeting. There was a couple of business managers that were so excited about it, and they were like, and this is what it looks like, and one of them turned her laptop just to show them the stuff. It wasn't the greatest tutorial, but it kind of piqued my interest, because we just did get off of this bargaining cycle, and with having one last year and now doing the other 3 in 1 year, I'm like, I'll use any help and resources I can get for this round. So we are going to use it for the other 3, see how it goes. And then when we're back here, and I'm sure everyone in the school committee is still going to be here in 3 years for the next round. And I'm really optimistic about it. So what it does is it has all of the contracts across the state, but you give it 10 comparables that you want, 10 districts that you would like to look at in comparison to yours. And then it really breaks down at every level, at a, master's step, highest step, at a bachelor's step. You can pick any step or any part of the scale, any column, and it'll show you right where your teacher's contract ranks, and it'll show you all of your unit B also. So you can compare all of the clerical, custodial, food service, all of the hourly wages. And that was great. But one of the things I'm most excited about is that it also has it shows you all the districts that had the greatest increases, and then also shows you which part of the contract changed that might be the reason for that. So if there's a school that had a 4.5% increase, but then it gives you a column where it says, well, that's because they extended their school day by 15 minutes a day. So it shows you the kind of give and take of what led to that COLA. It also has a breakdown of all the benefits. So for if you were talking about in negotiations about paternity leave, you can look at across the state what those benefits look like in different contracts. So you might say, no, wait, no one gets that much, but here's sort of a trend, and here's some that we're comfortable with, and some language. You can, it also has all the contracts in, so you can click and it has the full contract if you want to look at something specific. But then there's also the projection tool, where I have inputted for the other 3 schools how many teachers are at each step and column. So if we have a proposal that's, say, 333 over 3 years, it'll instantly give me what the financial impact of that is. If we said, well, let's compare that to 234, it'll then put them side by side and show you the comparison between the two. So I'm excited about the time saver it is. And also, like Shannon said, and what a lot of the feedback we got is that, especially around benefits, takes some of the emotion out of it, and shows you just what are the trends and what's realistic. So we're really excited about it. I'm sorry we missed out by a year for Shutesbury, but I think it's going to be really helpful in the future.
Yeah, just hearing you talk about it, I can totally see how that would have helped us quite a bit at our at our negotiating meetings. Leah, yes.
Yeah, just to add on, I had to do some of that work in my last job. Shannon can tell you about the spreadsheets that I was putting together to compare across regions, and even understanding the impacts of some of the changes that we were considering against the 3 years and what our budget was going to be. It was a lot of work, so it would have been helpful to have something like this ready-made as opposed to all my Excel work. Though my skills, like it helped with my skills, but it would have been nice.
One thing I was really struck with when Caitlin was giving me the tutorial is that it lets you see the picture too. So sometimes the narrative is, well, if I were at Amherst, I'd be getting this much. And it lets you see, well, that's true, but here's after year 3, that gap that you're seeing is actually reversed. I mean, that's what we were finding. Like, it looks like it's really beneficial to new teachers, but if you're a veteran teacher, where do you stand? And so it let you have all those variables that if you were trying to figure that out would just be, so time consuming to, so what does step 5 look like for everybody? It's really labor intensive. And so, and then my experience that I've shared with Leah, sometimes they question your numbers. And so this is just right there. Everyone can look at it. It's instant. You can click it. And so I think that it will certainly be beneficial.
I'm sold. Totally sold. That sounds everything that I just feel like, again, half of
we
what
bought it. So
I know, yeah. I think half of what we just dealt with in our negotiation cycle here, like all of the anxiety provoking pieces of it and the reason that it dragged on had to do with a lot of that back and forth. And like everything that all 3 of you just spoke to were like exactly, what we experienced in various parts of that drawn out process. So I hope that this will make it easier and take the emotion out of it. And yeah, that sounds great. Any other questions or any other things for Shannon? All right, moving on to Caitlin.
Okay, so I have a couple quick things, and then I'm going to get to the end of your report. So we did the retro pay after the contract was ratified, signed off on. We were given the go-ahead from Adam. Retro pay went into the paychecks on the 15th. So that was the most recent one. Very little. I think we had one kind of payroll error for one teacher that was or one staff member that was overpaid, that was very quickly fixed. And that was pretty much, besides that, everything was very smooth. And our human resources payroll person, Jessalyn did a fantastic job. She worked on Sunday to make sure it got done for that payroll cycle so that they would have it on the earlier payroll. So now we can kind of just move on into our regular payroll cycles. With that said, we're in the best position of the 4 schools that we know what to expect next year for salaries. So I know going through negotiation cycle is a hard year, but it makes the next few years much easier when trying to budget for the next year. So the FY26 budget, the first draft, the sort of first preview you're going to have will be at the next school committee meeting. The next school committee meeting in November, because our school committee meetings run on cycles of Leverett and Swift River are the first week of the month, and Shutesbury and Irving are the third week of the month. It works out pretty well to do Shutesbury and Irving in that third week of November, and then the other 2 schools in the first week of December. So you'll have that at the next meeting. And at that point, I think we'll have a better picture of the Union 28 part of the budget, but it's likely that we're not going to have that finalized until the January meeting. But we'll take what we have after the JSC meeting and kind of use those numbers as here's what we have and here's what it looks like right now. But then you'll have December and January and February to kind of work through the budget season. So the end of year report, those were due on on September 30th. Ours were submitted on the 27th. They've been submitted. I have what's called the certification statement that needs to be signed by the town accountant, the superintendent, and the chair of the school committee with approval through a vote by the committee. So what the certification statement says is that to the best of your knowledge, this is what were the numbers that we're reporting on. And I'll give you, I'm going to give you a kind of brief rundown of what this report looks like. I can send it to you also. There's, to the best of my knowledge, our numbers and what I've received from the town are correct on the report. But I also have to go through, because we were audited last year, because we're on a 3-year cycle for a single school municipal district. When I go through the audits, that might give me some edits to make in the future, and those can be done through amendments just through the DESI website. So just because I believe these numbers are correct and we've reported correctly, doesn't mean that we won't have amendments in the future, or there might be things that we've picked up on that need to be changed. It's just a statement that says, to the best of our knowledge, these are what our end of year report is. So let me share my screen. Can I share?
You should be able to. It says that I'm allowing it from multiple people, but
I'm in the security and privacy.
That's what happened to me too. And I think we have a security block on it. So I don't know if there's something that we have to download.
But you did get it to share, didn't you, at one point, Anne, when you were
Shannon
around?
did.
No.
Yeah,
Shannon
if
did.
you want to share it with me, Caitlin, I can try to share it.
Yep, I can share it with you.
So is it a setting on your all computers, or does it something that?
Oh no, I was so optimistic.
It's a security setting for us. I think I know,
because I can see it says here on my side, it says all participants can share just one at a time. That's all.
Yeah, it must be a computer based.
it's us.
Yeah, because it keeps bringing me to our open system preferences, security, and privacy to grant access.
Okay, I am going to try to share this, but I lose my visuals. So if it's not sharing, you'll have to tell me, because I won't know.
Okay.
Thank you again, Shannon.
Sure.
And while Shannon's getting it up, I'll just echo Caitlin in terms of it being very normal to have amendments done after the audit. So it's not anything concerning.
Thank you.
Thank
Can
you,
you
Leah.
see it, Caitlin?
I can see it. If you could go to the second tab, the one that says EOY.
Oh goodness, now you want me to do tabs? Hold on.
I saw a great meme this week that was like, Excel was created in 1985 and it was a picture of somebody looking joyful and happy. And then there was a picture of like somebody after Excel was created looking like mad and angry.
Yeah. I know, when you add pivot tables and the stuff that Excel can do now, it's like, I'm even like, no, I'm too old. I can't do anything.
I love a
So-
good conditional formatting though, for sure.
So this is the top section of the big tab is the EOY 24, and it's going to be really long. And it takes what a lot of the other tabs have and generates it into here in different ways of kind of looking at the data. So the first one is revenue from local sources. The revenue we have is tuition from individuals. That would be our preschool tuition. And Shannon, you can go down. The ones in blue are auto-populated from the state. So chapter 70, transportation, some of the grants, those all come in from the state. Those numbers I can't edit, or, tuition from school choice. You can go down. Then the next is a revenue expenditure summary for different kind of categories. So the first one is the school committee. So you'll notice the columns at the top have regular day, special education, and then undistributed for things like school committee expenses, superintendent, a lot of the central office. That's not broken down by regular day and special education because those are all just undistributed. They're for the entire district. And keep going. And you can go at kind of a slow pace until someone can tell her to stop actually, but we can kind of keep rolling. Other district administration, business and finance, these are all central office, legal services. Yep, and keep going. Technology, curriculum directors. Now it starts to get being broken down by special education and regular education. For department heads, that would be our student support services. And then the supervisory and the non-supervisory for our curriculum director. Then it goes into school leadership building. These are now into the instructional categories for principal, for everything that it takes to run the main office, clerical, contracted services, usually like our copier and office supplies. Then teachers' professional salaries broken by regular day and special education, medical therapeutic services, like our PT, OT, substitutes, our instructional assistants, librarian, and then we go into some PD portions. Outside professional development, and these are all within the general budget. So this portion does not include grants or any of our revolving funds. This is just what we're taking out of our general ledger. Then we have our guidance counselor and adjustment counselors. You'll notice that we don't have much in there because that was ESSER funded last year. So that will be in a different place. Psychological services or school psychologist. Some things we don't have in attendance and parent liaison services, medical health services. Some transportation. This transportation we have that is paid out of the school local budget is just for special education. We don't pay for transportation for the 5-star buses through our school budget that comes from the town, which you'll see later. And if you have questions about any of this, let me know. I don't know that I'll be able to answer a single cell at a time without kind of digging in to make sure that my answer is complete and accurate. And then we are into the building. So custodial services, heating of building, utility services, grounds, all of the building stuff. Maintenance of buildings, maintenance of equipment. Insurances. Payments to other districts, this would be an out of district placement. But other than that, we don't have any other tuition or payments to other districts. Now, this is the expenditures by city or town. So we've got transportation, which is paid for by the town, retirement contributions, and insurance for active employees. This information is collected from the town because we don't keep that the town budget on the school side. And payments from the districts, since they're in blue, they're also auto-populated by the state. Tuition or school choice tuition for regular day and special education, and tuition to charter schools that comes from the town's budget. Then we have expenditures from federal grants. This is where I have to put in anything we purchase or pay for out of any grants goes into these lines. So if we fund a teacher, adjustment counselor, or purchases for supplies, curriculum, any of that. And also if we have someone that is paid for out of a grant, we still have to pay for portions of their insurance through the grant that gets paid directly to the town. And you keep going. This you can scroll right through because that's for regional school districts and we're not one. And then, oh, back up. And then this is for, so this is instructional expenditures to the general fund. Schedule 3. And a lot of them are the same numbers because we might take a tab, like the schedule 3 is a tab at the bottom. That's where I put in everything, and then it pulls it all into this in kind of different areas. So Shannon, you can go pretty quickly through this one because it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. This one's through instructional expenditures for grants and other funding sources. Again, you've seen a lot of these numbers. They're kind of regenerated in different ways of looking at it. And a little further.
Wait a second here, sorry.
Leah, I'm sure you miss end of year reports. Special education. So here's where to break down special education expenses by students in pre-K versus students in K through 6. And report on circuit breaker. People transportation, what we spend on students inside 1.5 miles and outside 1.5 miles. I don't know if there's a better way, but basically we have to get a list of student locations, and then I use like Google Maps to figure out who's within and outside of 1.5 miles to see how many students are reimbursable and those that are not reimbursable that are outside of that amount, that are within 1.5 miles. And then special education. Our special education transportation gets reported there. Then there's some vocational that doesn't apply to us. And Then Schedule 19. So now we're looking at the 24-25 budgets, not what we spent last year, but what we plan on spending this year, what we're budgeted to spend this year. So that way the state has the information to say, this is what you budgeted, and now here's what you spent, and then they can compare the two and look for anomalies or and other pieces. And then here's what the city town has budgeted. So we have to look at the FY25 budget for Shutesbury. And I will say it's difficult for a few of our towns because they don't have separate lines for school employees versus the rest of the town employees. So I have to reach out to the town treasurer, Ryan, who's also our treasurer for Leverett and for New Salem Wendell, and kind of ask him really nicely if he can break out all of their budget for how many are school employees and how many are not, and just give us a school employee amounts. And then Schedule 19, here's the annual school budget for next year from revenues, from other sources, and then that's more regional. And then the summary is kind of everything together, all fun types. Here's what we spend. And you can get to the bottom of that. That gives us sort of a summary. And that's the first tab. This is the big tab. This is the end of year report, has everything. Some of the other tabs are not, are just ways of putting information, and it pulls it into this. Shannon, if you could go to the third tab, reports. So here's some comparisons and go down. If the system picks up on a huge difference, so let's say that we spent 1 million on teaching staff one year, and then we spend 2 million the next year, it's going to flag it and say, can you check those numbers? And if you scroll down some more and keep going, this is where it would tell us whether there was an error, and there weren't any places where there were, we picked up on anything that was outside of a reason why we knew something, or actually I don't think they flagged any for that. And at the very bottom of this information is the big part, the one that we keep going. At the bottom of this is where we want to meet maintenance of effort. So maintenance of effort is we've spent over 90% of what we spent the previous year to meet maintenance of effort for Title I. And we've spent, yep, at the bottom there. So IDEA maintenance of effort, we need to spend over what we spent last year on special education expenses to meet maintenance of effort for IDEA. If you don't meet maintenance of effort, they could ask for you to return the money or not get funding in the future for Title I and IDEA. So it's really important that we meet maintenance of effort. We have met it for both Title I and for IDEA, which is great. It takes a lot of the work out. There are exemptions. For instance, we qualified for an exemption last year for IDEA. I'm getting a little confused which one was Lever and which one was Shutesbury, because we had to show the exemptions for both. But one reason it could be is if you had a student that was an added district placement in 6th grade and then they've graduated on, we know we're not going to spend as much on special education expenses for the next year. And that's when you have to tell the state, well, we had someone graduate out, and here's all the invoices, and here's the payroll stubs, and then they can say, okay, you're cleared for this year. Luckily, we don't have to try to get exemptions for either one because we've met maintenance of effort. And the other tab I'm going to show you that doesn't already appear is Schedule 20. Nope, Schedule 18. Yeah, so this is where we report on our teacher's contract for FY24. So they collect all of this information about the current teacher's contract, what COLAs they've had, what the salaries are at different steps, different levels, longevity, teachers, working year, benefits. And so we just provide the state with all information about the contract through Schedule 18. And that's about all I know I can tolerate of looking at an end of year report. So
I stopped sharing. Is that all right?
yeah, perfect. Thank you. So we can discuss it, and if you would like to vote to allow the chair to sign the end of year report certification statement, then you can do so. It doesn't mean that there couldn't be any things that need to be amended in the future. It's just to say, to the best of our knowledge, here's our report is in line with our expenses.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Caitlin? Okay. So we would have to have a movement to allow me to sign the end of year certification statement. Is that correct? And then move forward. All right.
I move to have our chair sign the end of year report certification statement.
Seconded.
All right. All in favor? Why do I?
Go by.
Jack, aye.
All right. All are in favor. Thank you guys very much. Principal's report.
Oh, one thing. Is it okay if
Oh,
we
sorry,
use
Caitlin.
DocuSign? No, it's okay. I'm actually done, but is it okay if we use DocuSign for that, Jeremy?
Yes, please. I mean, unless you just want to come visit me at Tech, and then you're more than welcome to come over and I'll sign it there too. But
Is the restaurant open yet?
only on Thursdays. So yeah. Okay. Thank you. So principal's report, Anne.
So I figured with the MCAS data that might probably do it, so we don't go till midnight tonight, unless, you know.
Love it.
But honestly, I really it's been incredible. They did the Apple store today. I don't know if people are all familiar. You probably all are. I think I've tried all your baked goods. It's spectacular. I've never seen a cooler field trip. They walked up the hill. The kids walked up the hill to a local farm. They donate all these apples. The kids take all the apples home, and then overnight all these miraculous apple creations come. I mean, it was unbelievable. I have to get new pants. So it was incredible. And we had the chief, the state police officer came by today, and he happened to pick the best day ever to come visit us at Shutesbury. But honestly, I just have wonderful things to report. Everything's going swimmingly. We're very excited about the contract being settled and all of that being taken care of, and we're full steam ahead.
Right. Well, and you know, apples are healthy, so don't worry about it.
That's literally what I said. Yes.
All right. So Amherst Pelham, we don't have Annie here, but maybe this would be a good place for me to just kind of very briefly kind of go through what was discussed at the first four-town meeting as far as the Amherst regional stuff. I just want to say that this is really early. I think based on last year's experience, they're trying to kind of get some feedback and have us understand things earlier, because it felt like last year, I don't know, it was my first year last year, so I don't really know, but it seemed like it was kind of a little bit of a hot mess. One thing I will say is that I'm hoping that the new superintendent in Amherst, and this is just my own personal view, is going to stay there for quite a while. She's really great. She's dynamic. And, you know, compared to last year, she came right in, identifying obviously the big issues that they have there, and then coming up with some really, basically, she and her people created all of the things that they showed us within 4 days. And it was basically like identifying the issues, and here are some really outside of the box ways that we're thinking about dealing with this, which was frankly very refreshing to hear. So what she said is, you know, it's very, very early. We have to think outside of the normal. Last year was definitely a Band-Aid. Between the regional middle school, there's $5 million in salaries. Amherst Regional High School, 12 million. 2 million operating budget. Central is like 3 million with a 13 million operating budget, most of that being transportation. And as it is, there's some big gaps. And she showed like basically 6 different scenarios of ways that we could go from the base above the base. And all of them result in a deficit no matter what. There were none of those 6 scenarios that were like, and that's fully funded and level and we're good. So like no matter what, there's going to be some cutting, but they're thinking about all sorts of things from the possibility of furloughing all staff for a day, trying to reduce transportation costs because they're going into a new their transportation contract is up this year. So she's hopeful that they might be able to figure out something there. But she really wants to, she has this idea over the next few years. She really wants to move from this kind of outdated level and line item budgeting process and get to a more performance-based budgeting that aligns financial resources with educational outcomes, which, though very sort of theoretical in my mind still, is an interesting thing that I have not heard of before. So really her idea would be, let's figure out how we can move from level funding to line item right now. And then as they get more settled in, move towards a more performance-based funding structure. And they're looking at really, I mean, if you've read the papers recently, they're looking at some interesting ideas, including kind of restructuring the region to patch like financial groups and increase student performance. They want to consolidate the central office. And they're thinking about really the most interesting thing, and the thing that's got the most press so far, is this idea of shifting 7 to 12 to one building. So basically mothballing the middle school and moving everybody into the high school building as like two separate schools within that building. It would reduce like 3 professional staff. And I think they'd have like 5 building leaders, a 5 building leader reduction by doing that, and they could save up to 100,000. It was interesting that on the same day, the day before or the Friday before the Ford Town meeting, there was an article in the Gazette about these financial issues. In the same thing, at the same time, there was the Pioneer Valley Chinese Immersion School was going before the state to ask for 100 more seats. And one of the things that was interesting is that the deficit in Amherst is about equal to what they pay out in charter school costs. So that was another thing that was sort of discussed there. And as they looked over, some of the other options were like becoming a DESE innovation school, because they're finding that people are leaving because of Voc Tech, and people are leaving because the offerings don't match where they see themselves in high school. So she's really focused on like, what do the students want? The students deserve the best, but can we just agree on how to provide the basic and then try to figure out how to get these learning outcomes and fund these learning outcomes that might cause students to be a little more invested. And so again, like overall, what I want to just kind of put out there is that it seems like this superintendent and this administration is thinking differently and trying to figure out new ways, but all of them are going to, no matter what, we're going to be in a situation next year. And I think the finance committee already knows this, where we need to kind of, last year, every small town in the region upped above our guardrail numbers to fund the Amherst schools. And that's not sustainable. And so we have to figure that piece out. But Susie, who couldn't be here tonight, is very optimistic that as far as Shutesbury goes, we are going to be okay with however it kind of shakes out. So I'm following Susie as my leader on that, because she knows all things like that. So that's again, it's very, very early. But that's kind of what the superintendent's thinking down there. So that's not the Amherst Pelham regional update, but that is the Fort Town meeting update. So if you guys have any questions, I mean, really, like I said, it's very preliminary. It was a lot of just kind of spitballing. Here's where we're at. Here's how we're thinking. But at least it's not just like, well, we have this budget and we're going to keep doing everything the way it is, and how are we going to fund it? It seems like there's a lot, for 4 days of thinking, I was really impressed with some of the options that they were kind of throwing out there. So that's my piece. Yes, Jen Taylor.
Just real quickly, wanted to say, first of all, I think the reason we're missing Anna is because there is an Amherst regional meeting
Perfect.
tonight.
That's
So just
great reason.
I could be mistaken on that, but I'm pretty sure I saw that that's
Okay.
true. And also just wanted to say that the idea of consolidating, I normally would not be for putting 7th through 12th in one building. But knowing the dynamic in Amherst and what's going on in the middle school, I think that that's probably a really great idea. Just putting my 2 cents in on that.
Yeah, and I think I remember you last week asking Anna, or last month asking Anna if the superintendent was aware of the mold issues and the issues in the middle school. The middle school pool also has been broken for the last month. It just got fixed this week. So like I think this might answer a little bit of that question. I think they look at the deferred maintenance and the state of the middle school, and it feels like something that's underutilized. And I had the number written down somewhere, but I think the actual high school is rated for like 3,000 students, and they've got like 1,000 something in there. So there's the capacity there. The other interesting piece that I didn't just mention was they have talked, as we were talking earlier in the year about what they were going to do with that sixth grade that they have to move out of the school that they're rebuilding. There is an idea there too to move the sixth grade into the high school building as well in a very functionally separate space with its own administration, which would seem to be kind of along the lines of what we thought they might think of doing, which was like basically asking the region to permit this, but not expecting Pelham or Shutesbury or Leverett to kick our students to them. So that seems to be where her head is at right now in that space as well. And granted, there's a lot of time to figure those things out, but that's where she's at.
Thank-
Yeah. Leah.
To the point of having 7th through 12th grade in the school, I actually went to a school like that and had an amazing experience in that kind of environment. So if you guys want for some additional support around pushing that when that conversation does come up, I'm happy to share.
Yeah. And I think part of that idea is, last year when they were talking about the staff cuts, it looked like at one point the thing that was put on the table was, well, we're going to have to get rid of foreign languages. And here's a way that maybe your program isn't as robust, but you can build it and have those instructional people be moving easily between different grades and providing those services. So you're trying to provide, like, what they're talking about is committing to the basics and then trying to build out from that. And I think that's really where she sees that working is we can get all these people in the building. We can get rid of some central office staff. We can get rid of some, building leadership staff, which are going to be expensive. And it also shows that we're kind of trying our best to like support the students and not just support the bureaucracy of the school is I think kind of where she's coming from on that. Shannon.
I was just going to say that having a middle and high school within the same building happens all over Western Mass. I mean, it happens at Mahar, it happens in Turner's, it happens at Mohawk. I mean, it's not unheard of. So I think to Leah's point, you can have some really innovative, great programs. And sometimes it's a benefit to some students with program offerings and keeping middle schoolers engaged if they have more options. So it's not a bad thing. And I know it's not my lane, but just going to add that 2 cents that it may be new for Amherst, but it's not new in Western Mass for sure.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that's hard though, is I think that it would have been unthinkable 10 or 15 years ago in a place like Amherst or Northampton that you would be in that sort of a situation. But I know that, even working where I work at Tech, I know that various schools, even Greenfield, moving the 8th grade up to the high school for a while, their hope was that they could get people invested in the culture of like that we are Greenfield, we are Amherst. And then you maybe don't have the same kind of bleeding out that you do when the kids get into high school. So like, I think there's a lot of different reasons to do it. And it definitely is a model. It's definitely the model for regionals around here, but it looks like maybe it's becoming more of the model for some of the bigger municipals as well. So we will see. It's still like we'll see what she can push through and see how the talk goes. Obviously, we're still kind of bystanders on all of this right now. We have very little say on it until something is actually moved to happen. So moving on, Jen, was there a CES meeting that you attended that had anything to discuss?
There was a lot in the
Okay, great.
CES meeting. Although really probably not a ton of it actually fully pertains to us. I am gonna try and just breeze through this report as possible, but they had their 50th anniversary celebration at the Ecotarium in Worcester, which many of us were invited to. All of the CES board was invited to. It was 100 members, staff members also, and that was a great success. They had a lot of fun. I did not make it to that, unfortunately. And let's see, over the summer, they added gutters to La Casita and cleaned the gutters on the main building. There were signs for gender neutral bathrooms installed. and a couple of other building updates I don't need to go into. Let's see. The biggest thing, I think, there's a new health and wellness digital instructional guide that they just put together. And there's going to be some PD for all of the phys ed teachers in the area to kind of get up to these new standards and put out this guide for health and wellness curriculum, which is exciting for me as a health coach. And see, I'm sorry, just making sure that all of this is directly pertaining that I want to report on. I think really there's just really education, mental health was a big focus, and something that they're really working on right now. That's something that they're going to be working on bringing to all of the schools, just kind of more supporting. They're trying to get a better understanding of exactly what's needed. And then they are meeting with the Commonwealth Preschool Partnerships Initiative team. And that was at the Northampton Public Schools. So I'm not sure exactly how that's going to affect all of us, but I know that they're working to try to align to those standards and really try and get us to a better place with early childhood mental health. We talked a lot about mental health coming out of the pandemic and even continuing through the pandemic here. And let's see, I think those were the big things. That's, I think, I could probably leave it there. I don't think there's much else that I really needed to report out on to us. That's good.
Okay. Thank you, Jen.
Yeah.
All right. So moving on, policy reviews, we've got first reading on relations with non-public schools, communicable diseases, and relations with police authorities. We don't need to take a vote on that, but I just want to, we should have all read them, I guess is all I'm saying. Second reading tonight on educational opportunities for military children, educational opportunities for children in foster care, and student absences and excuses. Does anybody have any discussion of those three policies?
Hi, yes. I actually had something on the communicable diseases.
Oh, sorry. Yep, we can go back to that one. Yep. Yeah.
In paragraph 3, I think we need to add public between of and health, the Massachusetts Department of Public Health.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for looking so closely at it. I totally just read that before the meeting and didn't see that at all.
And then for the group that we're on now for second reading, is it the second reading one? The one regarding relationships with non-public schools?
That's also in the first reading.
First reading, sorry,
Yep.
yeah. So that one for the first reading, I just had a question on when this process would actually be used.
Yeah, that's a good question, I guess. That would be, I think, a question for Anne and Shannon more.
Okay, so should I come to the next policy
That,
to just ask, because I don't need to take up the
Well, I
time
think it's
here.
already gone out of policy, so
Okay.
I just want to take a quick look, so if you'll bear with. I can't think of a time that we would actually use it, to be honest. But I think if you had, I'm trying to think of a time that you would actually use it. I can't think of one offhand. Isn't that awful? I really
think, I mean, for me, I think at the high school level, I can see how this policy gets used when you have
sure.
if you have a drug infraction or something else that like you don't want to necessarily criminalize it if possible. Like you want to deal with it. Like we have different responsibilities as staff and administration of a school And, you know, working at a school that has a school resource officer, like they have a very different lens and a very different set of a very different set of operating procedures than we do as instructors or administrators. So for me, this policy, and when I read it in the policy committee too, it reads more just like kind of statement of like, we're going to keep the best interests of our students in mind when interacting with police and law enforcement agencies, that it's important that we recognize that we have a different role than they have, but also to be supportive of our student health and safety, you know, in the cases of abuse or something else that would be necessary to involve the police in. That's kind of the way I read it and passed it on to this committee,
Okay,
if that makes
thank
sense.
you.
And I think the other thing, you know, so much of what we do in the policy committee, and this can change, but the normal operating procedure has been kind of just taking these Mass Association of School Committee kind of boilerplate language and kind of accepting that, unless we have, like, we made some changes to the sexual harassment policy last year to add in some more, a more kind of, we added in some more gender affirming language into it to try to codify that in the school. So like they're totally open to additions and deletions, but a lot of this stuff is just really straight from the Mass Association for School Committees.
Is it also like, if we're sending a student to a private school to use Title I funding, like would we,
I believe private schools can use Title I funding. I don't believe that they have access to that.
okay.
You were referring, because now I was confused about which policy. You were talking about like when would we approve a private school? That's the one you were looking at?
Yeah, the one that talks about when we would send someone to a private school, like relations with non-public schools. Yeah, like, I mean, I'm assuming like parents would just put their child in a private school. It has to go
They
through
would.
school.
It doesn't, I think when I read this, I read more of like if you did a parent co-op, so it's not really homeschool. But it's we would have to endorse that, but if someone came and did, I mean, if it's a charter or something like, they have their own licensing things that, and they're not gonna come to us for it. So I
Yeah.
think this
But
would pertain more to like a parent co-op group as a private school.
except that I think that's also like, I was just again in Amherst right now, a former co-op, like a former homeschool co-op is now actually applying to become a school in the interests of not getting funding, but in order to be able to do field trips and approach some other things. And they did have to go before the school committee to have their curriculum approved. And I think this is also that piece. So if like somebody wanted to open a private school in Shutesbury, we don't have a lot of say, but we would have some, we'd have to be able to look at their curriculum and say like, yeah, this seems like
It meets state standards,
it's a
right?
comparable piece. Yeah. So
Right.
that's what I read this one as.
Sort of like how we do for homeschool, right? If somebody
Right.
wants to do homeschool, we're not gonna say they can't, but we do vet their, you know, are they teaching to the standards? Are they on grade level? And even charters have to report, like when the Pioneer immersion is increasing, we got a formal notification about the very limited grounds that we would have to object to it.
Okay.
And one of them fell under was the curriculum not, did we have reason to believe the curriculum was not appropriate or something like that?
All right,
So.
thank you guys.
Sorry, yeah, I really appreciate the questions as well, Leah. I feel like it's always helpful because I feel like so often I feel kind of lost in these things. I'm like, well, if the Mass Association of School Committees says it's good, I'm sure it's okay. And I really think that having somebody with a critical lens and a grammatic lens is really important to this as well. Just because Shannon just brought this up too, the one thing that we did talk about doing in policy committee today was, Jen, in reference to your homeschooling policy, that was just approved again last year, but we'd like to, we're going to bring it back to the policy committee for next month's meeting, and we'd love to invite you to come along and discuss it with us there. So we'll bring it back into the policy committee and we'll kind of start over there and see what we can see. What I'd like to hear your feedback on it and your experiences or what you've heard of
Awesome.
experiences with it. So, all
Thank
right.
you. Would you do me a favor and just shoot me an email about that, Jeremy?
That's
Just
on
the
my
date,
on
so
my
I
list for
put it
right
on the
after this ends. Yeah.
calendar. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem. So at present moment, it sounds like we don't have any amendments to the second readings. So again, we need someone to move to approve, someone to second, and we need to vote on those three policies.
I move that we approve the policy JFABE, educational opportunities for military children, the policy JFABF, educational opportunities for children in foster care, and the policy JH, student absences and excuses for approval.
A second.
All right, all in favor, please state so and your name. My UI.
Taylor, I.
Long go by.
Jack, I.
So that is unanimous and they all pass. Don't need an executive session. So future business, we have the Shutesbury Policy Committee, which I will email you about as well, Jen. Next month is Thursday, November 21st at 6:30. We've got our next school committee meeting November 21st at 7 o'clock following that policy meeting. Union 28 Joint Supervisory is on November 18th at 7 o'clock. I believe that's me and Leah and Nate, if I remember correctly. Are there other future agenda items that we need to consider? All right. Hearing none. Somebody want to move to adjourn us?
Oh, Jeremy,
Oh,
you
sorry.
mentioned
Yeah,
a
Leah.
couple things at the top of the meeting. Maybe we should
Yeah.
have them added to the future agenda. So like, there were a couple things Jen had mentioned at the last meeting.
Yeah,
like
so the homeschooling
add
policy was
those?
one of them. Yeah, the homeschooling policy was one of those, which we're gonna bring in the policy meeting next time. What was the other one? Oh my goodness, I
It
wrote
was
this in
like
here.
joint with PTO, joint party
Oh,
with
All
PTO.
right, the PTO. Thank you very much, Leah. The PTO and school committee kind of a meet and greet. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Jen. Yes, you were.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, I wish we had pulled something together for open house to be nice to do that in the future, potentially for a number of us to attend open house as well.
Well,
But
I
I think-
will. I'll add that to the perpetual calendar that I'm currently editing, so that it'll be on there.
Do you want to share that perpetual?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I haven't shared it because
already?
no, I didn't, because I think actually, that's not true. For a long time, all I had was a paper copy that was handed off to me by a former chair of the school committee. But I did get a digital copy, so I will try to just kind of add the edits that I have so far and I'll send that out. And what would be great actually is if you're part of a committee, like for example, Jen's CES, and there are things that are happening, if you could just add those into the column on the perpetual calendar as you see them so that we can update it. What I found is even in today's meeting, like, in October, it said the assessment and MCAS accountability presentation. It's there. So it's actually not as off as I think it's not as off as we thought it was, but it is from 2014. It is a decade old. So like as we go through, if we could just update it. And I think Caitlin, especially for you, I'm sure that the budget column is kind of off from the way that you operate things. And so maybe you and I could just talk about that and try to update it, or I could share it out and you could update it and that would be fine as well. So yeah, I'll share that out. I'll share that out after the meeting today. Yeah, Jen.
The only other thing I had brought up last meeting, which was real quick, was just about maybe changing the September school committee
Yep.
date in the future. So just putting
Yeah,
that out
that would
there.
be
Yeah.
that would be a good thing to add to that as well. Is to just check for the conflict with the block party, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah, it would be great also, like whatever, if there is a conflict like today, if there's a conflict with the Amherst Regional School Committee meeting, avoiding things like that as much as possible would be helpful as well. I know we have this set for the third Thursday, but I mean, there's nothing saying that we can't move it on a time where we need to. Okay. Do you want to say anything else, Jen, about the PTO and school committee kind of get together? I don't really know how to go about kind of starting to figure that out, but I'm happy to be part of it.
Yeah, sure. So I think, like I said, it's great if we can insert ourselves kind of into things that are already pre-existing for next year. So open house, the Yahoo, Boohoo breakfast on the first day,
Yeah.
those are great opportunities for us to do meet and greets. And then I think maybe just doing, because we didn't get to do that this year, there is the upcoming library and town event at the Shutesbury Athletic Club, if anybody's interested in doing that and kind of representing school committee there as well. But I think if we can do one formal, just meet and greet at the elementary school, it might be nice to do like a coffee hour either in the morning or do maybe one in the morning. One thing we did with PTO at one point was switch off morning meetings and evening meetings because some people can do mornings and some people can do evenings. So it's sometimes nice to have like one in the morning 1 month and then a few months later have one in the evening so different people can attend.
Well,
Just,
let's
yeah.
let's put this on the agenda for our next meeting. And let's just talk about, because I think it might be really great to have like a liaison. I mean, it would probably be Anna because it would make the most sense, but to have a liaison with the PTO, and to have maybe even just to kind of have, and I know like attack like any sort of school events where it would be appropriate to kind of appear as school committee members. That might be something that's useful, and even like cheesy as it sounds, some like magnetic name tags that have our names and just say school committee on them so that like people feel comfortable coming up to us and talking, because I do think that like I usually go to these events as a parent, not as a school committee member. And not that I necessarily want to like invite a whole ton, but like it would be good to feel like people could approach us and know who we are, if they do have things that they want to talk about. So maybe we can talk about that a little more next meeting.
Definitely. Awesome. Thanks so much, Jeremy.
All right. So does anybody want to move to adjourn us? Because who's
I
going to do
move to
it?
adjourn today's meeting. Thanks, Jeremy.
Nice. Thank you.
Seconded.
Seconded by Jen. All right. All in favor? Aye. Mayu.
Taylor,
Blanco, bye.
All right. Thank you guys all so much. I look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.